Well, hey folks, in last week's video I was showing you the changes we were making in the greenhouse, and I talked quite a bit about the floating seed trays that we use. Well, let me tell you, since then I have been inundated with questions about the seed trays. Because I referred to them as floating seed trays, a lot of folks have never heard of them, so they want to know, do I really float them in water? Well, what do I use as a vessel to float them in? Do they come with a tray to float them in? Lots and lots of questions. So people have asked me if I would touch base on these once again, give more information, how I use them, kind of go through the whole process. So I wasn't planning on talking about gardening in this episode, but there's been so many questions, and a lot of them are repeat questions, and instead of taking the time, because I don't have the time, to type out those answers over and over again, I'm making this video by request of my subscribers, and I will share everything that I know and have experienced with the floating seed trays. So let's get started. Okay, so the first order of business is to fill the trays with potting soil. Trays come in different sizes, and the rule of thumb is to plant small seeds in small cells and larger seeds in the larger cavities. Trays come in the 242 cell size, 128 cells, 72, and 32, but the 72 is our favorite and can be used for most anything. Once the seeds are planted, we fill the vessel with about an inch of water. Then insert the styrofoam tray and keep it in a warm place. And that's it. Now, ever since I showed that video last weekend, the one question people have been asking me the most is, what do we use for a vessel to float the trays in? Now, wouldn't you think that companies that sold floating seed trays would offer custom fit plastic trays that these would float into? They don't. At least I can't find them. So for the first few years of using floating seed trays, I had set up buffet tables in a shed. Then I made a frame with 2x4s, the size of the buffet table. Put it on top. I just laid in a tarp. I filled it with water. Then I laid in all of the styrofoam seed trays, and they floated inside that frame. It worked out great. But here we are starting lots and lots of seeds. And I don't have room to set up all kinds of buffet tables in here. So I decided it would be more convenient for me to make individual water baths for each tray. Okay, so that's what I did. And I'm glad I did, because it worked out really good. If I had some plants, maybe I felt that they were struggling, they were behind some of the other ones in a different part of the greenhouse, then I would take those and maybe put them up top where it's warmer, a better environment. So I moved them around and it worked out great. All I did was I took some scrap wood. All right, these here were just made out of scraps of OSB board, just little rips, 2 inches, okay? I nailed them together with a narrow crown stapler, all right? That's it. Some are made of plywood, some have some old pine boards. Doesn't matter what you use, okay? And this is just a little bit larger than the tray. That way I can get my fingers in here to pick it up. Worked out great. So I made the tray like this, and then I just take some plastic sheeting, poly sheeting, lay it in here, come up over the edge, staple it to the outside. You staple it inside, you're going to make leaks, okay? So don't have a brain fart and go in here with a staple. All right, so that's what I did, and they work out great. We have better success starting seeds in a floating seed tray than any other method we have ever tried. We never start seeds directly in the garden anymore, for a number of reasons. First off, being on my hands and knees in the garden planting all those little seeds is not enjoyable to me. I'd rather be indoors, like here in the greenhouse, at a workbench, comfortable height, planting my seeds. You plant them in the garden, you're susceptible to a whole bunch of problems. You could have a lot of cold rain, heavy rain, then cold damp weather. A little critter or a bird could have gotten at your seeds and you're unaware of it. Then you find yourself waiting for things to germinate and there's no seeds left to germinate at all. Maybe you're busier than you planned on being. Your seedlings are coming up, and so are the weeds, and things get choked. You know what I'm talking about. Planting them in the seed tray, I eliminate all of those problems. For one thing, when they come up, I see exactly what I have. I don't have to water them because it's self-watering. They're floating in water. The water wicks up through these little holes. It's fantastic. You have tremendous root generation with these things. These pyramid-shaped cells with the little water hole at the bottom really excels root generation. The only drawback to that, and I spoke about this in my last video, is if you live in a northern zone like us, and your planting time, to put it out in the garden is getting pushed further and further out because of cold weather, well, because root generation is excelled in these, it's not going to be long before your seedlings become pot-bound. But once my seedlings come up about that tall, I just transplant them up into a cup. These little party cups, they work great. These are great planters. They just drill a few little holes in the bottom. They're cheap, they're reusable, they're fantastic. If you've been following us for a while, you saw this greenhouse was full of these last year. We had a lot of plants in this greenhouse. Now here's one thing that I learned about using these seed trays that I want to pass on to you. In the past, when we were growing our seeds in the seed trays, we were using the 72 cell size, and we started the seeds in the floating seed trays. They sat in there for quite a long time. They were about that tall, and we went from seed tray to the garden. All of those seedlings were started underneath grow lights. Okay? They grow big and bushy, beautiful, healthy plants, and we went from the seed tray to the garden. Now here we are living off of the grid. I don't have the option of using grow lights. We heat the greenhouse with a wood stove, and at night, sometimes, while we're sleeping and the fire dies down, the temperature will cool down. We'll come down here in the morning and the temp might be in the 30s. I'll kindle a fire, let the place warm back up. If I'm finding that the temperature is getting down too far in the night and my little seed cells are really saturated, I will take the tray up out of the water, just put it crosswise over the tray so it's not floating anymore, and I'll do a couple of days like that and then a couple of days floating, and I'll keep switching back and forth. Because I'm finding that the cooler temperatures and the saturated dirt, sometimes the seeds will want to rot before they germinate. If I can keep them in a warmer environment, I'll keep them floating at all times. Removing seedlings from the tray is easy. With a razor knife, I shaved down a cedar shingle to match the contour of the cells, and this worked pretty good. The only problem was my shingle often got mistaken for kindling and was tossed into the wood stove. I decided some more permanent implements were in order, so I made new ones from cheap plastic putty knives I found at the dollar store. Well, we're styling now, folks. Well, there you go, a perfect fit. Now I have my 242, 128, 72, and 32 all cut to fit, ready to use, and they won't get lost and tossed into the kindling pile. Well, my friends, I hope that fills in the blanks and answers all the questions that you have. I'm pretty certain that if you give these floating seed trays a try, that you will stick with them just like we have. The photo that I used for the thumbnail, that was taken the very first year that we tried these seed trays. Those plants were nice and lush, and they went right from the tray directly into the garden. We had great success with them. Like I said, here in the greenhouse, we don't have the option of using grow lights. We have short days and cooler temps. So we found that we get the best results by starting the seeds in the tray and then bumping them up to a larger vessel like these party cups. And then they stay in the cups until they go into the garden. Don't be afraid to experiment. That's how we find what works for us, and you will find what works for you. Experiment, learn a few things, learn what to do and what not to do. And hey, because what works for one person doesn't always work for another, because everyone's situation is different. Well, I hope you found this information to be beneficial. You know, we're always experimenting, trying new things. We always share our successes and failures with you. So don't forget to subscribe so you can be updated on all of our experiments here in the greenhouse. I will put the link to the 128 cell size seed tray in the description below. As I mentioned, we have really good success with the 72 size as well. That's a good all-around size seed tray, but they're hard to find. You might have to do a little bit of shopping around to find those. So I want to wish you all the best of luck with your gardening venture. All the best to you all, and God bless.
Frankie and the boss out walking in the woods, living life happy and free. Tracks in the snow everywhere they go. There's a pokey way up in that tree. A beaver built a pond where they have some fun, taking life a day at a time. Best friends until the end. Frankie and the boss. Frankie and the boss. Frankie and the boss.